It was mine, but when I got home, his shop, the one he promised me, was already gone. They stole my business because we are family. Until I found for what my grandpa prepared me. I grew up in a small Midwestern town. Not a lot going on. Strip malls, church BBQs, Friday night football. My grandfather owned a small but respected repair shop right off the main road. Grant and Sons Small Engine Repair, even though there were no other sons. Just me. My grandpa raised me more than my own parents. That's not an exaggeration. My dad worked in insurance and my mom was a school guidance counselor. Very check-the-box parent. Roof over my head, sure. Birthday presents? Yeah. Emotional connection? Non-existent. My grandpa was the one who showed up to my Little League games. He's the one who taught me how to change brake pads, tune up a mower engine, solder wires. I was in the shop by the time I was 10, sweeping up and fetching sockets. He always told me the shop would be mine someday. This place has your name written all over it, Noah, he said. You're the only one in the family who gives a damn about keeping it alive. We used to close the place down on Sundays, go fishing with peanut butter sandwiches and a thermos of sweet tea. That man never once raised his voice at me. He just expected I'd take over the business because it made sense, because he trusted me. The plan was always finish high school, do college just to say I did, then come back and run the shop. I wasn't chasing a corner office or six figures. I loved that shop. That was the dream. My parents hated that. They thought blue-collar work was beneath me. Said I should aim higher. Get a degree, get a job in finance or tech, something respectable. They weren't evil about it, just cold, like their version of success was the only one that counted. Grandpa understood. He told me to go to college anyway just in case, he said. So I went. State University, 2 hours from home. Majored in business management. Still drove home every other weekend to work at the shop. Every time I walked through those garage doors, it felt like breathing again. Then came second semester of sophomore year. It was February when I missed his call. He always called Sunday evenings, but I had a midterm that week and left my phone on silent. I figured I'd call him back Monday. That call never came. Instead, I got a call from my mom Tuesday morning. Just a flat clip. Dad passed in his sleep. I don't remember what I said, or what I didn't say, just that I skipped class, got in my car, and drove straight home. When I walked into their house, my parents acted like I'd just come home for spring break. My dad handed me a suit jacket, his, not even mine, and told me the funeral would be Friday. No one cried. Not them anyway. I did. I cried harder than I'd cried in my life. The funeral was small. A few neighbors, some longtime clients, the guy who delivered air compressor parts. I gave a short eulogy. Could barely finish it. The only thing I remember clearly is standing by the casket and saying, "I'll take care of it, Grandpa. I promise." That's what he would have wanted. I stayed the weekend, helped sort through his house, filed the mail, told my professors I needed another week. I thought I'd spend that week cleaning up the shop, maybe reopening soon, just part-time. That shop was his life, and now it was supposed to be mine. So when I drove to the shop Monday morning, keys in hand, toolbox in the trunk, and found the windows covered with brown butcher paper, I thought maybe someone was doing renovation. Then I saw the sign, sold, under new ownership. I froze, thought it was a prank, called my dad immediately, and he answered like I was calling about groceries. Yeah, he said, we sold it. I stood there, on the sidewalk, looking at the only place that had ever felt like home. You, what? We sold it, Noah, he repeated like I was slow. We needed the money. You weren't going to run it anyway. I can't even describe the feeling. It was like someone punched a hole in my chest. I was always going to run it, I said. Silence. Then he said, you're in college. You've got a future ahead of you. That shop was dying anyway. We got a good price. I hung up. I don't remember driving back to my dorm. I just remember my hands shaking so hard on the steering wheel I thought I'd crash. I didn't tell my friends. I didn't go to class. I didn't eat for 2 days. My roommate came in at one point and saw me sitting in the dark and asked if someone died. I told him, yeah, my future. I didn't go back home for a while after that. Honestly, I couldn't. Every mile between me and that town felt like armor. But I wasn't done. The shop wasn't some old rundown pit. My grandfather kept it spotless. He was always ahead on taxes. Equipment work. The books were clean. I knew because I helped him with them. There was no dying business to speak of. So who'd buy it? I found out through my friend Jamie, who still lived back home. She worked part-time at the hardware store across from the shop. I texted her asking if she'd seen anything. She called me right away. Yeah, it's some guy named Russell, she said. Kind of a big deal now. Bought the shop 2 weeks before your grandpa passed. Hold up, 2 weeks before? I checked the calendar. Grandpa died on February 11th. She said Russell bought the shop around January 28th. That means I called my mom. What do you mean it was sold before he died? I asked. She paused. We started the process before, she said, but it wasn't finalized until a few days after. That was a lie. You don't put a sold sign up on a handshake. I could feel it. Something was off. So I drove home the next weekend unannounced. Just walked into the house like I used to. My mom was in the kitchen, startled. My dad came downstairs like nothing was wrong. I didn't sit down. Tell me the truth, I said. When did you sell the shop? My dad finally admitted it. He and my mom had started the process in December, while Grandpa was still alive. I was the power of attorney, he said like it explained everything. Apparently, after Grandpa had some minor heart issue in the fall, my dad started pushing for future planning. Got Grandpa to sign over some things just in case. That included the right to sign off on business assets. And then, while I was pulling all-nighters and writing case studies for business class, they sold the only thing that mattered to me. He was getting old, my mom chimed in. We didn't want you to feel pressured to take on the burden. The burden? I said, that was my dream. My dad didn't even blink. Dreams change. strange. I was shaking. I asked who Russell was. They said he was a family friend. I had never heard his name in my life. Then my mom added, he's actually buying more properties in town. We thought it would be better for the community. I walked out, got in my car, just sat there in the driveway staring at the house my grandfather built. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Jamie. FYI, Russell used to date your mom. Like back in the day. Weird, right? I stared at that text for 10 full minutes. Weird doesn't even begin to cover it. It explained the fast track deal. It explained why my parents seemed so comfortable handing over something that didn't belong to them. Hell, it explained the cash, but not the betrayal. They didn't just sell it. They erased me from it. Never mentioned the idea of me taking over. Never gave me a chance. And I started asking myself things I shouldn't have had to ask. Did Grandpa even know they were selling it? Was he okay with it? Or did he die thinking the business was still in the family? A week later, Jamie texted again. Russell renamed the place. New sign, Russell's Pro Repair. Painted over the old letter. Changed the font. New website. New logo. Same location. Same equipment. I recognized one of Grandpa's toolboxes in the background of an Instagram post. It felt like watching someone rip pages out of my childhood, one by one, and feed them into a shredder. I decided I needed answers, real ones. So I found Grandpa's old lawyer. She remembered me right away. Said she was sorry to hear about his passing. I told her I needed to know what was in his will. At first, she hesitated, but I reminded her I was family. I told her I had the right. She agreed to meet. I drove to her office, hands sweating the entire way. What she told me broke what little peace I had left. I walk into the lawyer's office, thinking maybe there's a slim chance this is all a misunderstanding. That my grandpa just hadn't gotten around to updating his will. Or maybe they pressured him in his final weeks and she'd seen it. That's not what I got. What I got was a manila folder. Inside, a single will dated November 17th, less than 3 months before he passed. I asked, is this the final one? She nodded. It's the only one I have on file. The rest were discarded at your father's request after this was signed. I sat back. My throat went dry. This version of the will left everything to my dad. The house, the shop, the vehicles, a couple of small charity donations, sure, but nothing else. I wasn't even mentioned. Not a sentence. Not a single sentence about the boy who sat beside him every Saturday morning with coffee and WD-40. I asked her if she remembered the previous version. Oh, yes, she said, flipping open her notes. The older draft, about 2 years before, had the shop set to pass directly to you. The house was to go to your father and some money to your mom. But the shop, he was adamant, that was yours. She even pulled out a scanned copy of the old draft. My name was right there. To my grandson, Noah, I leave full ownership of Grant and Sons Repair. It was like getting a hug and a punch in the stomach at the same time. So I asked the obvious question, why did he change it? She hesitated. Your father requested a meeting to go over his father's affair. Brought your grandfather in one day. I remember he didn't seem his usual self. He looked tired, confused, and your father did most of the talking. She looked at me a long time before saying, Noah, I think your grandfather was pressured. That's when something snapped in my brain. They'd waited until he was weak after the heart issue and swooped in like vultures. They used legal access to push through papers he probably didn't fully understand. Told him I was too young, too busy, that I'd moved on, that it was for the best. They didn't just steal my inheritance. They manipulated a dying man into handing it over. I thanked her, took copies, and walked out shaking. My next stop was Russell's new shop. I wasn't planning to go in, I just wanted to see it up close. But as I stood across the street, I noticed the bay door was open. There it was. Grandpa's red Craftsman rolling tool chest. Same scuffs on the top drawer. Still had the Grant and Sons decal on the side. And behind it, Russell, in my grandfather's shop coat. I nearly lost it. I went across the street and walked straight into the shop. He looked up, didn't recognize me at first, then gave a fake tight smile. You must be Noah, he said. Heard a lot about you. I just said, take the coat off. He chuckled. Excuse me. That coat. Take it off. That was my grandfather. He didn't move, just leaned against the counter like we were having a casual chat. I bought the business, son. Everything in it. I didn't care. You dated my mom, I said. That actually made him pause. He looked surprised for a second, then just smiled again. That was a long time ago. It made me sick. He tried to act like this was just a clean deal, that my dad offered the shop. He agreed, and that was that. It's just business, he said. I stared at him and said, no. Business is when both sides know what they're losing. What you did, that was theft with a handshake. I left before I did something stupid. Later that night, I confronted my dad again. He didn't deny a thing. We talked to him. He agreed. He was getting forgetful. Forgetful. That's what he called it. I said, you used that. You used his confusion. He said, we were trying to help you, Noah. You're too close to it to see clearly. You had bigger things ahead of you. No, I said. I had a legacy. He shook his head and said something that I will never forget. It was never yours to begin with. He just let you play around in it. I left the house that night and never went back. After that last conversation with my dad, I couldn't stop replaying what he said. It was never yours to begin with. I kept hearing it on a loop. Every memory I had of that shop, every lunch break with Grandpa, every oil stain I'd scrubbed out of the floor, rewritten by that one sentence. So I stopped trying to talk to them. I started digging instead. I wanted to know why this deal had gone through so quickly. Why Russell? Why now? My gut told me this wasn't just about a business transaction. Jamie, the friend who first told me about Russell, texted me a week later. Hey, random question. Are your parents selling the house too? I didn't understand. No, I replied. Why? She sent me a link. A real estate listing. My grandfather's house. Already listed. Already staged. Already photographed. Except it wasn't my family's furniture in the photos. There were neutral couches, clean lines, artwork no one anyone in my family would pick. It looked like an Airbnb. My room was completely empty. Gone. It wasn't just a listing, it had already been sold. I didn't even know they'd moved. Jamie later told me she overheard a guy at the diner say, yeah, Russell and his fiancée are gonna gut the whole thing. Fiancé. That word hit me like a freight train. I called Jamie. Wait, who's his fiancé? I asked. She went quiet. Then, I thought you knew. My stomach dropped. Your mom. At first I thought she was joking, but Jamie wasn't the type. She said it quietly, cautiously, like she didn't want to be the one to break it to me. I asked her to repeat it. Your mom. I saw them. They've been going to open houses together, holding hands. She introduced him as her fiancé. I hung up. My head was spinning. I pulled up Facebook, searched Russell's name. His account was private, but his profile photo? Him and my mom. At a lake, smiling, arm around her shoulders. The date? 6 weeks after my grandfather died. I stared at that photo until my eyes burned. Then I texted my cousin Leo, who still lived in town. Me, have you seen anything weird between Russell and my mom? Leo, bro, they've been together for months. People just assumed it started after your grandpa passed. After? What a convenient lie. So I called my mom. She didn't answer. Called again. No answer. She finally texted me. I'm sorry you had to find out like this. Can we talk soon? I didn't respond. A week passed. Then, too, I ignored her messages. I was too busy rethinking every memory I had of her. Every stiff birthday hug. Every guilt-trippy phone call while I was away at school. Every time she said, you don't understand how hard we've worked for you. But then I got a message from an unfamiliar number. Russell. He messaged me. I understand you're upset, but this isn't the way to handle things. The audacity of that man. I called him immediately. Are you seriously messaging me right now? He kept calm. You need to understand, your parents were drifting apart for years. This didn't just happen overnight. You don't get to understand anything, I said. You're a leech who bought your way into my family's grave. He said, I know this is hard, but your mom, she deserves to be happy. Happy? I laughed. She sold out her own son. She erased my future. For you. He paused, then said the one thing that burned me more than anything. Your grandfather would have wanted her taken care of. My blood went cold. You didn't know him, I said. But it hit me then, this was always about money, about control, and about image. My parents had their golden retirement plan. Sell the business, the house, start fresh, and marry into the money they made off a dead man's legacy. And me? I was a liability. A reminder of a promise they'd never intended to keep. After finding out that my own mother was engaged to the guy who bought my inheritance, I hit a low I didn't even know existed. I stopped answering calls, quit going to class for a few days. Professors emailed, friends texted, I didn't answer. Then one day, I got an email. Simple subject line. Grant and Sons, storage rental renewal notice. At first, I thought it was spam, but I opened it. It was legit. Apparently, my grandpa had rented a small storage unit at the industrial park on the edge of town, under the old shop's name. Auto-renewed annually. Paid in full through a debit account still in his name, which had probably slipped through my dad's estate cleanout. The weird part? The unit had never been accessed in the 6 months since he passed. I didn't even know he had a unit. Neither did Jamie when I asked, so I booked a ride home the next day. The storage place was one of those metal warehouse strips, all numbered units with padlocks and camera signs that you know don't work. I gave the guy my ID and the email. He looked it up. Unit 18B. I asked when it was last accessed. He checked the computer. December 12th, the day it was rented, exactly 2 months before my grandfather died. I went quiet. The guy handed me a key and said, just bring it back before closing. I walked to 18B. The moment I opened that metal door and saw what was inside, my knees buckled a little. It wasn't furniture or boxes or junk. It was the old signage. The original Grant and Sons repair wooden sign, faded, chipped, but still intact, mounted on a stand. Next to it, Grandpa's old desk. His real one, not the front desk from the shop. This one had coffee cup stains and 2 missing drawer handles. The rest of the unit was empty, except for one box, sealed with black duct tape. Inside the box, notebooks, receipts, and 2 manila envelopes. The first envelope was labeled in Grandpa's handwriting. Noah, if they take the shop. My throat clenched. I opened it. Inside, a handwritten letter, dated December 15th. Noah, if you're reading this, I guess things went the way I feared. I've seen the way your father talks about the shop. I don't trust what he's planning. He keeps saying it's time to reorganize things. I'm not dumb. I know what that means. You're the only one who loved this place the way I did. I've seen it in you since you were 10, elbows deep in a carburetor you couldn't name yet. I don't know how this will shake out, but if they do what I think they might, don't give up. This isn't over. Grandpa, I sat there on the floor of the unit just rereading that over and over. My chest hurt, like something inside me finally snapped back into place after months of being bent the wrong way. The second envelope? It was a signed affidavit, typed, notarized, witnessed by a retired notary I actually remembered from town. The affidavit stated that he had not intended to modify his will in November, that he had signed under pressure from his son, that the original version reflected his true wishes. My hands were shaking. There was also a copy of the original will, signed and dated 2 years before, with my name all over it, and taped to the back, a bank slip for a private safety deposit box at a local credit union, under my name. It didn't make sense at first. I hadn't opened any such account, but when I went to the bank with ID and the affidavit, they verified it. Grandpa had opened it in my name using a custodial setup, transferred to full control the day I turned 21. Inside, cash. Not a life-changing amount, maybe a couple thousand, but tucked beneath it, the deed to the land behind the original shop. See, the shop itself sat on a standard lot, but Grandpa had quietly bought the adjacent parcel back back in 2004. His retirement project, he called it once. He never built anything on it, just kept it cleared. And here was the title, in my name, signed, clean. They hadn't touched it because they never knew about it. Part of my grandfather's legacy still belonged to me. Not them, not Russell, not my mother, me. And now, I had the proof to challenge everything they did. I didn't go to the police, didn't scream on social media, didn't even confront them again. Not yet. Instead, I took that affidavit, the original will, the deed, and the notarized bank paperwork, and I walked it straight into a lawyer's office. Not just any lawyer. Mr. Carlisle, an old friend of my grandfather. They played chess together every Wednesday night for 15 years. I'd forgotten he was still practicing until the bank clerk mentioned his name. I didn't even have to explain everything. As soon as I handed him the documents and said, "My parents sold my grandfather's business behind my back," he just nodded slowly and said, "Let's fix that." What followed was 6 weeks of silent, methodical preparation. We filed a civil challenge against the estate transfer and the business sale, citing undue influence and coercion of an elderly individual, with the affidavit and notary record backing it. Then, using the deed to the adjoining property, my property, we filed for an injunction against Russell's ongoing renovations to the lot, which now crossed onto the landline Grandpa never sold. He thought the land came with the shop. Didn't. He'd been operating a commercial business partially on land he didn't own. That meant liability. That meant lawsuit. Then we filed a quiet title action to reassert the land boundaries and prove Russell had encroached onto my rightful property. But the real bombshell? Carlisle's office found out that Russell's entire business loan, the one he used to buy the shop, was backed by the projected income of the shop itself, which meant if we proved the sale was invalid due to fraud or coercion, that loan collapses. He defaults. He loses everything. So we waited, let it all stack, let them build up their fake life. Then one morning, a process server showed up at their door during brunch. My parent, Russell, my mom's new engagement, all hit at once. The challenge, the injunction, the quiet title notice, the impending default on the business loan. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I walked into that shop, my grandfather's shop, with the press, local paper, Channel 3. I gave a statement. My grandfather built this shop with his bare hand. He passed it to me in his will. It was taken from me while I was in college. But now I have proof. This fight is for him. They ate it up. By nightfall, the story was everywhere in our town. People who'd known my grandpa, they were furious. Russell's reputation tanked overnight. His business dropped 60% within a week. No one trusted him. Contractors pulled deals. Sponsors bailed. I wasn't trying to ruin him, but I wasn't going to let him keep what he stole. 2 weeks later, I got a call from my dad. First time since all this started. He didn't sound angry. He sounded tired. "You didn't have to do all this." I said, "You sold my future while I was in class," then hung up. My mom tried messaging me a few days later. "You're really going to destroy your own family over a garage?" I didn't respond because it was never just a garage. And I filed for full business reinstatement under the original name, Grant and Sons Repair. There's no and Sons. It's just me.